Our reading today comes from Reverend Kate Wilkinson. This is a conversation amongst the flowers. One day, two children stood side by side looking at the garden, which was in full bloom. "Isn't it pretty?" said the first child, "with all the different colors?" "I don't see color," said the second child, for this is what their parents had taught them to say. This started up quite a conversation among the flowers, who spoke their own quiet language to each other. "That makes me want to cry," said the bleeding heart, who was always full of feeling on the best days. "You always want to cry," said the iris, who was always self-possessed, never shedding petals here and there like the apple blossoms which grew above her. "But it's so sad," the bleeding heart repeated, "not to see color." "Don't worry," said the flag, upright and direct as always. "They're just pretending anyway when they say that." "But why would they say such a thing?" asked the peony indignantly. "It would be such a shame not to see my beautiful magenta layers." Of all the flowers in the garden, she was the most showy. "Because they were taught the wrong thing about this country when they got here," said the flag, who often spoke about the country's founding. "They were told this place was a melting pot, that everyone should be the same." The sweet grass, who had been here long before, swayed gently in the breeze and added, "They didn't understand that this land is a garden, that we each add beauty with our different colors and shapes and sizes." "Well, I certainly do," said the peony, ever confident. "They forget," said the lupin, that we bloom in our own way and in different seasons to make the world more beautiful." "But will they remember?" asked the nervous forget-me-not, always preoccupied with questions of legacy. "That's why we're here," remarked the daisy, who, though humble, knew the power of a simple gesture, having once been placed into the barrel of a gun to proclaim peace. "That's why we're here, to remind them." That reading always gets me. I'm getting teary. The daisy having once been placed in the barrel of a gun. I went to Kent State and spent 20 years living in the community. I don't know if you've ever lived in a place that has experienced deep trauma like that, but it shapes the people and the place in particular ways. "That's why we're here, to remind them," says the daisy. Even without the question of legacy, the purpose is one I identify with as a minister. My purpose is to remind you, to remind us of who we are, of what we value, of the importance of trying and failing and trying again, and only we can make the decision about whether the trying again will have its hoped for outcome or whether it is time to try something else. This year is the 102nd anniversary of the flower ceremony first held in Prague. This is one of two uniquely Unitarian Universalist celebrations that most of our congregations honor each year. It's one many of us have come to look forward to, and one whose importance grows as part of my own practice every year. Until about 2016, even having a historian's appreciation for the full story of its creator, it seemed all too easy and even self-serving at times to do this ceremony, beautiful as it is. Our American culture tells us all the time and in so many ways that, like flowers, we are each beautiful and wonderful, even as it treats us as if we can be molded into an ideal body type and as if whatever they're selling is something we all need. You're special as long as you conform. But that election changed everything. I mean, I knew things were not awesome no matter what the Lego song says, But that election made it clear that things were not only not awesome, they were so not awesome that a large portion of this country was prepared to sacrifice the greater good just to get their bargaining chips on one issue or another. And somehow here we are again. If you wonder why you're tired, in part, it's because living in Florida is exhausting as liberal and progressive people. Even though this year the legislative session in Florida was far less terrible than the previous one, victory isn't usually defined as not getting worse. It literally wears at our spirits, our minds, our hearts, and our bodies. The German Lutheran pastor Martin Niemöller was, in the 1920s and early 1930s, a supporter of Nazi ideas and supported radical right-wing movements. That is, until Adolf Hitler came into power in 1933. Then Niemöller became an outspoken opponent of Hitler's, criticizing his interference in the Protestant church. It's interesting how people change their viewpoints when they are suddenly personally impacted. It is Niemöller's words that have been immortalized to remind us of the lesson that he learned. He said, "First they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. Then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me." Here in Florida, of course, our voices are the marginalized ones, whereas the Florida legislature holds a super majority. We are a super minority, or at least it certainly looks that way in this gerrymandered in favor of right-wingers state. Republicans and right-wing politicians, strategists, and fundamentalists began plotting a long-term strategy back in the late 1960s and early 1970s. Once implemented, they knew it would take about 2 generations to have the traction they expected, but they were ready to wait it out. The outcome would be worth it. Margaret Atwood, Octavia Butler, and other authors and observers knew what was coming. That's why Atwood wrote The Handmaid's Tale, published in 1985, and Butler wrote much, but the Parable series was published in the 1990s. What we are seeing in the political landscape is the fruits of those carefully laid out plans and dreams, a right-wing takeover of our democratic republic. Germany also didn't become a dictatorship overnight. You know that Germany wasn't even a nation state until 1870, when all the parts of Germany and Prussia unified in a war against France. It's always about a war. Prussia and the German Confederation had long had a strong seat of power in Europe, and finally being called into one body altered the balance of power in Europe. Western Europe remained relatively stable only until the Great War in 1914. That same year, a Baptist pastor and church planter named Norbert Chapek fled Europe for the US. His views were too liberal even then for the German authorities, and it was not safe for him, his wife, and their 8 children to stay. During his time in the US, Chapek resigned as a Baptist minister as he continued to become more liberal, and after his first wife died, he met and married his second wife, Maya. Together, they found the Unitarian Church, which they were impressed by and their children loved. At the end of 1921, they decided to return to their newly formed homeland of Czechoslovakia, as they felt called both to help rebuild their country and to spread the good word of our faith. Chapek founded a church in Prague that grew quickly. Czechoslovakia, much like much of Western Europe, was deeply devastated by the war. People didn't have enough to eat. clothing to wear or to replace what they had. Families were displaced. The landscape itself was devastated. Many people left the Catholic Church, which was most common there. Chapek transformed the look and feel of his new congregation to make it even more distinct. No robes or vestments, long sermons that people connected with, different music. While people connected with the faith itself, they were not as connected to each other. In a place and time still so marked by the hardships of war and struggle, he wanted to create a ritual that would give them meaning and beauty and hope. He had an idea. Each person was asked to bring a flower or budding branch with them to church the following Sunday. The service was about a number of ideas related to the flowers, their unique beauty, how they differed from each other in shape, size, color, and kind, and the wonderful image they created when brought together. This was in 1923 when the Chapeks hosted the first flower festival. Reverend Dr. Chapek then made comparisons between the flowers and the people, reminding them each of their inherent worth and dignity, their beauty, the power they create and share when together. Each year he consecrated the bouquets they created together. One blessing he shared is, "Infinite Spirit of life, we ask thy blessing on these, thy messengers of fellowship and love. May they remind us amid diversities of knowledge and of gifts to be one in desire and affection and devotion to thy holy will. May they also remind us of the value of comradeship, of doing and sharing alike. May we cherish friendship as one of thy most precious gifts. May we not let awareness of another's talents discourage us or sully our relationship. But may we realize that whatever we can do, great or small, the efforts of all of us are needed to do thy work in this world." The flower ceremony became a ritual of togetherness and hope, and one that brought the community closer together to each other in a way that they had previously been unable to be. The church flourished. In 20 years, it had about 3,200 members. Also in 20 years, though Chapek's church was growing, Europe had entered another great war. Maya, who had long since become Reverend Maya, came back to the U.S. in 1939 to fundraise for relief efforts at home by going on a speaking tour. Things worsened such that she wasn't able to return home during the war. She decided to do what she could while she was here and became the minister of the New Bedford, Massachusetts Unitarian Church, where she served from 1940 to 1943. During the tour and her ministry, she shared the flower ceremony that her husband had created. It has become a widely celebrated ritual throughout Unitarian Universalism and remains the best known uniquely UU celebration. Reverend Norbert made the decision to stay home this time when the war broke out. He felt called to remain with his people. In 1941, along with one of his daughters, he was arrested by the Gestapo, and his books, sermons, and other writings were confiscated. He was charged with listening to foreign radio broadcasts, which was a capital offense, and other crimes. But of course, it was our heretical liberal theology that led him to be convicted. Ever a minister, he continued to support others in the camps, inspiring hope and an inner strength and peace through his quiet presence. He spent about a year and a half imprisoned and in concentration camps where he was tortured, and he was gassed to death in Dachau in late 1942. Reverend Maya learned of his death only after the war had ended. What Chapek taught us 100 years ago is the truth, that we are, each of us, in every way beautiful. Our colors and hues, our expressions, our sizes and shapes, the way our bodies move and sound, all of it is magic. and we are blessings and wonders all on our own. We each shine and bless the world as we are. And when we come together, this is the really important part. When we stand and sit and rock and roll together, we are even more beautiful. Together, we can craft a deeper wholeness we cannot find alone. Together, we craft a power we cannot find alone. Together, we are better. We need each other, and we belong to each other in the most profound ways. Chopik's life and work was never meant to be the center of the flower ceremony, but we don't have control over what our legacies will be. 102 years later, and given the state of the state, the country, and the world, it seems as important as ever to remember his faithful legacy. Like Miss Rumphius, he sought to make and leave the world a more beautiful place than the one he was born into. Chopik held his beliefs, even knowing what his future would be for doing so. Like the flowers in our reading, he worked to remind us all of our beauty and enoughness. Like both the story and the reading, he reminded us of the power we have as individuals and as a community to create hope and a greater good. A colleague also recently shared that after hearing Chopik's story, now every time he sees a flower, he thinks of it as nature's way of flipping the bird at fascists, if that helps at all. Beauty is one of the best ways to resist all that we need to resist. May the flowers always remind us of all that is good and true. May they remind us of the importance of beauty in our lives and work. May we honor lives of service to others and to our shared faith, and remember to hold and celebrate and build with each other. May we live into the radical possibilities of our faith and know both its strength and our failures. May our values ground us and our creativity bolster us to give us the strength and courage to live our lives as fully as we can in the time we have, as Reverend Dr. Chopik did with his, making the world a bit more beautiful.